call the meeting to order. Michelle, can you please read the sunshine law?
This is a regular meeting of the Mayor and Council of the Borough of Keyport, Tuesday, June 1st, 2021. Let the minutes show that adequate notice of this meeting as required by Public Law 1975, Chapter 231, has been provided by the annual notice, which has been posted on the bulletin boards, filed with the Borough Clerk, and has been sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Independent, the Star Ledger, and the Two River Times.
Great, thank you. Can we please have a roll call?
Mayor Kennedy,
Here.
Council President Good,
Here.
Councilmember Pacheco,
Here.
Councilmember Fotopoulos,
Here.
Councilmember McDermott,
Here.
Councilmember Davidson,
Here.
Councilmember McNamara.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. If everyone could please join me in saluting the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everyone could please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. You be reading the Pride Proclamation. Whereas the Borough of Keyport recognizes and proclaims the month of June 2021 as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer Pride Month throughout the borough. And whereas the Borough of Keyport joins friends and supporters throughout the state of New Jersey to observe Pride Month, to honor the history of LGBTQ liberation movement, and to support the rights of all citizens to experience equality and freedom from discrimination. Whereas the rainbow flag is widely recognized as a symbol of pride, inclusion, and support for social movements that advocate for LGBTQ people in society. Whereas all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. LGBTQ individuals have had immeasurable impact to the cultural, civic, and economic successes of our country. And whereas the Borough of Keyport is committed to supporting visibility, dignity, and equality for LGBTQ people and all people in our diverse community. And whereas, while society at large increasingly supports LGBTQ equality, it is essential to acknowledge that the need for education and awareness remains vital to end discrimination and prejudice. Whereas, this nation was founded on the principle that every individual has infinite dignity and worth. We call upon the people of this municipality to embrace this principle and to work to eliminate all forms of prejudice everywhere it exists. Whereas recognizing and celebrating Pride Month influences awareness and provides support and advocacy for New Jersey's LGBTQ community and is an opportunity to act and engage in dialogue to establish friendships, strengthen alliance, build acceptance, and advance equal rights. Now, therefore, I do proclaim June 2021 as Pride Month. As the Mayor of Borough of Keyport, I also call upon the citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools in the Borough of Keyport to recognize all LGBTQ residents whose influential and lasting contributions to our neighborhoods make the Borough of Keyport a vibrant and diverse community in which to live, work, and visit. And that will be posted on social media later tonight. Okay, before we open it up to public comment, do any council members have anything they want to request to be tabled or moved or more information? Mr. Delaney has requested that R-145-21 be tabled to the next meeting. Councilman McNamara?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm assuming I can also address communications by consent at this time?
Yes.
Okay. So I have a quick question. The letter received item number 1, Empire Wind Project Construction, and the second letter as well. The New York Bite lease and right of way. I'm just curious, are those part of the same project, those two projects, the letters for number 1 and 2? And then also, is this totally separate from anything we've heard about in terms of Ann Barrack, or I think it's now been named Broadway something? Just trying to get an idea of what that is. I know there's a lot of talk about things in the waters going forward with wind, et cetera.
I'll defer to Jay or Leslie on those two, please.
Yes, Mayor, the two questions. First of all, these are separate from the boardwalk proposed offshore wind program, and these are separate. If you take note of the maps, the one appears to be further along in the process, as the second notification appears that they are earlier in the process for a different, what I will refer to as a lease area, as referenced by the maps. That's simply based on my review of the maps. There's no additional communication that we've received, but that does appear to be the case.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council member? We have a motion to open to the public for agenda items only.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any members of the public on video first? Show of hands. Mr. Graham?
Elmer J. Graham Jr., 22 St. Peter's Place. I have few things here. Can you all explain Resolution 14121?
Yes. I know this is one of the 4 recreation grants, right?
That's correct.
So do you want to just explain that one, that we're on this agenda?
Yes, this is a program administered through the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs. This is authorizing the submission of a grant application for improvements to Cedar Street Park. For those that are regular participants in the meeting, this is a similar application to that which was filed last fall with the county open space program. This improvements to Cedar Street Park have been identified as a priority in terms of our park improvements. This will provide funds for renovation of the Cedar Street Park, including the park, which includes a ball field, 2 tennis courts, the basketball court, and there is proposed as part of this application the addition and installation of a trail from the parking lot on Pine Street around the ball field to connect to the waterfront and the beach at the foot of Cedar Street.
Okay. Okay, that's good. Can you explain Resolution 14221?
Yes, this is authorizing the submission under the Neighborhood Preservation Program. As you may recall, the borough was previously awarded a year one grant in the amount of $125,000 under what is commonly referred to as the MPP. These are federal and state funds that have been made available to the borough of Keyport for community development improvements within a designated area, which is roughly the downtown business area. Last year, or I should say this year, we are about to end, as of June 30, the year one of that project and program. So this is the formal authorization to proceed with the year two program, which starts on July 1.
All right, and one more thing on resolution 14321. Why do we need to hire a full-time patrol officer in the police office, the police department?
Yes, that the expansion or the increase of a police officer in the department was previously reviewed. It was a recommendation from the chief of police as well as the police committee. And that was previously reviewed by the governing body, and this starts that process.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I piggyback off of that though for a minute though? It's also because of many different changes in legislation that came forward this year from the state of New Jersey that require additional resources within the police department. And that was all from state legislation. Anyone else from the public by show of hands? Anyone on the phone line?
Hi, Mayor. This is Nancy Jones.
Hi.
Hi. I just wanted, I'm not sure if it's my turn to speak, but I know the Keyport Fest 5K is on the agenda tonight, and I've been the race director since 2007. So if there's any questions that I'd be, the council or mayor has any questions, or anyone else, I can happily address them. So just wanted to say I'm here and I can answer any questions if needed. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Sure. I'm going to put myself back on mute.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
John Merla, 34 Broad Street, Keyport.
Hi, Mr. Miller.
Mayor, just to follow up with what you just said regarding Mr. Graham's question regarding 14321. Were those state requirements or state mandates regarding those changes?
Mandates. It's all legislation.
Okay. All right. So let me follow up on 14321 and 14421. It looks like maybe I'm reading it wrong. Is this authorizing the borough administrator to do interviews?
He would be in consultation with the chief of police. And for 144, that would be with the police committee. The police commissioner serves as the lead,
Right,
along with someone else for Municipal Alliance.
okay. Just to follow up, I know it goes under old business. It's not on the agenda, but I know we've carried it for a while now. Maybe, Mayor, you can enlighten regarding the Jersey Central Power and Light pole inventory. How are we making out with that?
I can say that we have one of the poles replaced out front of Old Glory.
Yes.
So that's one out of, I think there's 7. I did inquire why when they were in the municipality, did they just not take care of several others? Verizon is really who we're waiting on. It's not necessarily JCP&O. They can't do what they need to do next until Verizon, and the Verizon was given an updated list. So when we were notified, when the utility company reached out to the police department to close that section of Broad Street, so they can switch the lines, we were hoping they were going to also hit some of the other spots, but they didn't. But this would be part of why I guess utility bills are so expensive.
Yeah. Okay, and my last question is regarding number 3 on communications, where the school is asking to utilize the waterfront and a waiver of the fee. Does the borough charge a fee for just the waterfront properties, or all properties that are borough owned when someone wants to
Right.
use them? Excuse
That's a
me?
great question. The current form only indicates, I believe it's 5 locations. One of them is council chambers. I don't have a form in front of me,
Okay.
but that is part of the process that we are trying to rectify by coming up with a new form and putting an ordinance on the book.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I'll ask my other questions in public session. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else on the
Michael
phone lines?
Lane, 51 First Street, Keyport.
Hi, Mr. Lane.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I try to do my homework before the meeting so I don't ask too many questions. But tonight, when I had to leave the house at 4:15, there was no full agenda posted. So bear with me, please.
Understood, and we apologize.
The R142, can you, in the resolution, is there any review of what is being funded, and would you explain what that is? Also, in communications number 1, provide details on the Empire Wind project. You know, who's the beneficiary of this project? Where is it located? What is its capacity? And the role the borough will play as to its consulting. Similarly, question relative to communications number 2 in the New York Light and the lease right-of-way. Who will that benefit? Location, capacity, and what's the role the borough will play? Again, in light of the fact that the full agenda package wasn't available, would you, I asked the members of the council to reopen the hearing or the meeting to public input once this data is provided. This is really a deficiency that needs to be dealt with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. Jay, would you be able to address or I know Ms. Henn is on the line, or Councilman McDermott or Davidson for the MPP? Do you have a breakdown in front of you? What our anticipation is for the second year?
Yes, I do not have it in front of me. I don't know whether one of the others that you mentioned does have it in front of them. In any event, this is in accordance with the previously adopted and approved 5-year plan that provides for parking and sidewalk improvements, as well as what is identified as a gateway and wayfinding. Those are the primary items that were identified. Some of those have been, the schedule from years 3, 4, and 5 have been changed somewhat to consolidate these projects into a single year. Some of them had provided for, in the original application, had provided for multi-year funding for a number of the items. And I believe this change, the year 2 now includes lighting upgrades as well.
Thank you. And was communication number 1 and 2? We can definitely, not that we're required to post a packet earlier, but past tradition has been, we've been posting it by around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the day of the meeting. And we were a couple hours short of that today. So I will bend to Mike Lane's request on that after the governing body has a chance to discuss it before we make a motion. But that's for the communications. The MPP questions, I believe, have been answered, Mr. Lane.
What I heard, and I apologize, what I heard is that there have been changes and there's a new year 2 program and it's not defined in this resolution.
Okay, so we'll have an updated one in the next meeting, Jay? An
Yeah, we're late on the meeting.
updated 5-year plan? Oh, okay. Okay. Any other members of the public on the phone line?
Also, I didn't hear anything about the wind project or the blight.
Right, communications, we're gonna reopen that back up after the governing body has a chance to discuss it. That was your request.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
No problem. Anyone else on the phone lines? Or video? Going once, going twice? Have a motion to close to the public?
Close. I mean, motion, sorry.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Give mayor's updates real quick. Last Tuesday, I accepted the invitation to accept the Monmouth County Commissioners Press Conference Summer Kickoff, which is exciting to return to some of those types of events. Attended the Green Team meeting, planning board meeting. I was invited to a brief visit of Governor Murphy over at Jacob Bob's after they had faced some setbacks on possible or delays in their opening. Mayor Kakuza and I had worked together. So the governor came to say hi because they were able to get open before Memorial Day weekend. And I guess he did a tour of different summer businesses. So I stopped over there for his brief visit. I was able to participate in 5 of the Memorial Day ceremonies yesterday. I just want to put a public thank you out to everyone for their patience as we sorted out the landscaper contract. But we are happy to say that that was resolved early last week. And we are all set for the remainder of the season through October with a local landscaper. So you should definitely see improvement to the park conditions. But as it was mentioned in the county commissioners press conference, landscapers and restaurants are facing huge shortages in staffing. So that's been part of the challenge, as well as finding a company that had the staffing to be able to do it. And with that said, now we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do any members of the governing body have any questions regarding resolutions R14021 through R14621, with the exception of 14521, which will be tabled to the next meeting? Can I have a motion to approve R14021 through R14621, with the exception of 14521?
Motion. Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Good,
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco,
Yes.
Councilmember Fotopoulos,
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott,
Yes.
Councilmember Davidson,
Yes.
Councilmember McNamara.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have a public hearing, adoption of ordinance number 621, amending and superseding Borough Code Chapter 3, Article 1, Police Department in its entirety. Michelle, can you please read the ordinance by title?
This is an ordinance of the Borough of Keyport, County of Monmouth, New Jersey, amending and superseding Chapter 3, Article 1, Police Department of the revised general ordinances of the Borough of Keyport in its entirety.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to open to the public?
Motion. Second. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Members of the public will go with video first. This is just for the public hearing for ordinance 6-21. Show of hands on video first. Okay, next to the phone lines. Going once, going twice. Can I have a motion to close to the public?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Can I have a motion to adopt ordinance 6-21? Can
Motion. Second.
I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Good,
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco,
Yes.
Councilmember Fotopoulos,
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott,
Yes.
Councilmember Davidson,
Yes.
Councilmember McNamara.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I have a motion authorizing the clerk to publish the ordinance as adopted?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nay or abstain? Okay. Communications by consent. Number 1 through 8 are for approval. 9, 10, and 11 are for receiving and filing. Yes.
Mayor, just to note that communication number 1 and 2, that they are, if it is the council's desire to approve these, in terms of the request is for to be identified as a consulting party. And with that, there is a request to identify a representative of the borough and an alternate to receive communications and attend meetings.
Do the members of the governing body have any commentary on any of those? Or do you need more time to review items 1 and 2? And does anyone want those tabled?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Hi, thank you. I believe we have 30 days to respond. Is that a hard deadline?
I don't believe so. That is what's stated in the correspondence. We have no additional communication besides that, but we can check if that's an issue or to see if there is some latitude there.
These letters pretty much are asking us to become a consulting party, which one would think by definition we would have input into some of these things that are happening. The information requested by Mr. Lane is also information that I'm definitely interested in, especially given that this serves the lower New York area, New York State area, Long Island, and other portions of New York. It does look to cut through some vital fishing grounds, and so there's a lot that I'm sure people along the municipalities, including ours along the Bayshore, would want to discuss. If this is just an introduction and a request to become officially part of the input process, I'm okay with it. And I'm okay with doing it tonight if we have to. But if we don't have to, I'm also okay with getting more information and moving forward the next meeting. But I just don't want to miss the deadline and not have, and I'm sure you feel the same way, Mayor. I don't want to miss the deadline and not have the input that they're offering us moving forward. Thanks.
Mayor, if I may, I did look at what the consulting agency's responsibility would be. And it's essentially to share their views, receive and review pertinent information, offer ideas, and consider possible solutions together with the federal agency and other consulting parties. So it is as the councilman thought it would be. It's to provide you an opportunity to be part of the table, so to speak, to sit at the table and to share your views and to hear what's going on and to be part of it, part of the process.
So may I make a suggestion that we kind of combine the requests at hand And maybe we take these two communications, move them to the next meeting, but put them on as a resolution, appointing a member of the governing body to be that person. And if there's any member of the governing body that's wishing to be that person, you can either tell me now or shoot me an email or.
I'm sorry, I didn't know if you were finished. I'm interested, but I also think it's a good idea, what you said. So do you need a motion?
Oh,
I just want to know if Ms. London agrees with that, and Jay, if that process would be suffice, and if we meet the deadline, if we table it to June 15th.
And Mayor, if I may, there is some verbiage in here indicating that they do request, if we wish to become a consulting, that it be within 30 days, but we could also request that at a later date. The only caveat is that obviously we would not be receiving the advance notice until that information is provided to them as to who would be the representative.
So one is May 3rd. So it was a date of receive or date of the letter. So May 10th. So we don't have another meeting before then.
Mayor Kennedy, are you going to open the meeting to public?
I indicated before we take it to a vote, we will, but we're still in discussion, Mr. Lane.
Mayor,
So what if we approved in the next meeting, we had a resolution appointing who would be the representative? Ms. London, Jay?
Again, Mayor, I see no problem with that. I don't think it is not a hard 30-day requirement.
That is correct. You do, it does have language, as Jay mentioned, to opt in later, but the caveat being you made some of the discussion that's taking place in the interim.
I like the idea, Mayor, that you put forth of opting in and then doing a resolution for whoever is going to be the appointee's next meeting. Is that what you said?
That was my second idea after the first one didn't work. Yeah. Okay, so we need a representative and then a backup, right? So that would, you were mentioning, right? Councilman Papadopoulos?
Oh, yeah, I would say, yeah, a second and a backup, and it might be beneficial. We can discuss offline, but what I would like to discuss is having a member of the Environmental Commission participate in that if they're willing. And if not, we'll find another member to go ahead and do it. We have until next meeting to designate who, correct?
Yeah, we'll just have to sort that out before Tuesday when the agenda closes.
Next Tuesday. Yep.
Right. Okay. So are there any other conversations on communications before we allow the public to speak again on communications?
Mayor?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson, was there any discussion on the possibly not waiving the fee for the school? I hate to be that person yet again, but we've been pretty consistent with at least asking the question if we should waive the fees at this point in time.
So there's pretty much been a mutual understanding in the past between the school and us, because they don't charge us use a fee to use it for reorg meetings or for summer camp. And the reciprocity, I'm drawing a blank on the word.
Reciprocation.
Tongue twisted on that one.
Reciprocity.
Yes, yeah, thank you. I was spelling it, but not saying it. Not that it's a deal, but we definitely make out on the deal on how much we use the school versus, I mean, there's the softball field too, but it's a great question and it's up for discussion if governing body wants to, but past history. But
I know,
I'm not all about just, I don't operate just because what's the way we've always done it.
Thank you for the information on that. I realized that. I just want to make sure it was a matter of a discussion that we put it out there as to why we're not having a discussion about waiving the fee for the school. So thank you for the information.
No problem. But again, it's perfect dialogue to have that conversation if that's something that we want to continue or not.
I have two questions. Regarding opting in, are we taking any agreement that we are in agreement with these two projects for communication 1 and 2 when we opt in as consultants?
Ms. London.
So by opting in, you're not taking any position.
Okay.
You're sitting at the table. You will bring back information to the governing body to advise what's being discussed. But virtually by just saying, yes, we want to be a consulting party and want to participate, you're not committing yourself to doing anything other than sitting at the table and listening and sharing information and sharing your concerns also as a borough.
Okay. The other question I had, we already signed an agreement, shared services with the school. So I think in some agreement, I think
That's for manpower. That's not for use of property.
Okay. All right. I'm fine with not with I'm fine with waiving.
Okay. I also want to point out number 8 for the letter from KBBC. This was trying to be proactive. Obviously, we had already given the approval for the townwide yard sale, as well as the farmer's market, but this just formalizes the deeds. And then we briefly discussed at the last meeting the possibility of, the last council meeting that is, about them using the mini park on Monday evenings, because that doesn't conflict with anything that we have going on with the borough, between yoga, movies, or what the businesses have going on for outdoor entertainment on Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays. But the other item on here is the annual car show. That is a proactive measure. There has not been a date set by the KBBC board. So I guess that's more of a question. Is anyone opposed that if they felt they had the manpower and means to put on a car show, is anyone opposed to that?
It says August 19th in the communication. Is that just a placeholder, Mayor?
At this point in time, it was a placeholder. It basically, we were trying to flip things so that at the next KBBC meeting, they can make decisions to move forward and start planning. But that's still in discussion as far as the car show, from what I remember, unless things happen after I logged off at the last KBBC meeting. But then the same thing, they have not formalized the agreement yet with the ballroom dancing or salsa dancing. But they are hoping to move forward as long as the governing body doesn't have any issues with it.
Are they adding Dogs Night Out in?
That is not yet planned.
No issues at all. I'm looking forward to seeing more.
If there's no further commentary from the governing body members, can I please have a motion to open for public for only communication by consent items?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
My comments are focused on the two communications, number 1 and number 2. There's a tremendous amount of information on the internet regarding the Empire Wind Project. It's a plan for an area of 80,000 square feet, 80,000 acres of the wind farm in federal waters, and averages about 20 miles south of Long Island and east of Rockaways, with all of the benefits going to the state of New York City. The transmission line for the power goes into Long Island. The letter, I have the perception it's like when we are going to have a construction project, you have to notify all residents within 200 feet. This is, I believe, a federal process that you have to notify all residents maybe within 20 miles, because Long Branch got a letter from, and it sounds like it's a very similar letter to what you received at the borough, but since I haven't seen your letter, it details an offer to be a consultant. The project, the closest wind farm project is about 14 miles from Jones Beach, and I would guess only about 10 or 12 miles off of Sandy Hook. My guess is that all of the towns along the Bayshore, in Seabright, Long Branch, got the same letter. So it sounds to me like this may be an opportunity for the Bayfront or Bayshore Council of Mayors to delegate one person among all the towns to contribute to this and brief all the towns. I think tying up all these people is not very efficient and effective. And I recommend you bring it up at the Council of Mayors and see if between all the towns you can come up with one experienced person who can deal with the issue. Thank you for the opportunity for the input.
Mr. Lane, luck would have it that this Friday evening is our first return of Bayshore Mayors Association meetings. We have not had one since I believe January, February of 2020. I can definitely ask. I just want to point out that the Bayshore Mayors Association stops at Highlands, does not include Seabright or Long Branch. But I can definitely see if they received communication and what stance they are taking as well.
If you like, I can send you a copy of the letter that went to Long Branch.
Yes, if you don't mind sending that, and we'll get that. If you can send that to Jay, and he can circulate, Jay and Michelle, and if you could circulate that to the governing body.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public regarding communication? A motion to close to the public?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So next we would have approval for items 1 through 11. I'm sorry, 1 through 8 for approval, 9, 10, 11 to receipt and file.
Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Roll call, please, Michelle.
Councilmember Good.
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco. Councilmember Fotopoulos.
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott.
Yes.
Councilmember Davidson.
Yes.
And Councilmember McNamara.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have approval for receipt and file, approval for minutes, April 2021 regular meeting.
Motion.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Good.
That didn't come through, Councilman.
Councilmember Good.
Didn't come through.
One more time.
Yes.
There you go.
Councilmember Fotopoulos.
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott.
Yes.
Councilmember Davidson.
Yes.
And Councilmember McNamara.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the Cannabis Business License Advisory Committee update. I'm not sure if any of the members of the 3 members of the committee would like to give any update. I have a timeline on how things are going to have to move forward. It's up to the committee if you want me to read the timeline or if you want to give updates first.
Kathleen's raising her hand. So.
Sure. Councilman McNamara.
Thank you. I apologize if this is too long, but I wanted to be somewhat comprehensive since we haven't been out in front of people in a while and the timeline, as you know, is nearing. So our goal is to provide everybody with an update on the timeline around the cannabis legislation. 69.15% of Keyport voters supported legislation, which is higher than the 67% statewide. As everybody knows, February 22nd is when the governor signed into law what's known as the Act. And then on April 12th, the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission was established. And at that organizational meeting, the executive director, Jeff Brown, provided some comments on anticipating staffing, infrastructure, and regulations. And he indicated that their rulemaking would be comprehensive and hopefully completed in less than 5 months. Just to put that in perspective, 5 months from April would be September, and municipalities are being asked to have ordinances in place, obviously before that, by August 21st. Director Brown did state that they were already seeing some municipal bans being put in place and was encouraging municipalities to wait for the regulations before taking any action. Then on April 20th in Keyport, a resolution was adopted by Mayor and Council establishing the Cannabis Business License Advisory Committee. We were tasked with 6 different items: to study and review the act to determine the scope and limitations afforded municipalities, to explore and consider potential zoning requirements, to make recommendations of preferred locations, consider other limitations or requirements within the borough for cannabis businesses, to briefly consider the impact of cannabis businesses on existing businesses, and to prepare a report with findings and recommendations, including a proposed draft ordinance. So at this time, the ad hoc committee would like to give some initial reports regarding those tasks. Scope and limitations surrounding permitting, limiting, or prohibiting cannabis. So actions can include, but are not limited to, municipalities specifying the number of businesses in each class that they opt to permit, specifying locations through zoning and hours of operation for the permitted classes, and establishing civil penalties for violation of ordinances. If municipalities take no action within the 180 days, any class will be permitted to operate and, depending on the type of establishment, be considered a permitted use in certain areas. No action on any class or classes also precludes the municipality from subsequently prohibiting that class or classes for 5 years. Municipalities that opt out initially can opt in at any time. Application and license fees: while the state will have its own requirements, fees, and detailed business plans, etc., that will be required, municipalities may require local application and license fees and additional plans and procedures to operate within their community. Local cannabis tax: municipalities can enact by ordinance a local cannabis tax. Currently, the tax cannot exceed 2% on all classes except for wholesalers, which is limited to 1%. Zoning and local considerations: the Cannabis Regulatory Commission conversations on the topic have been very limited in scope surrounding any guidance. Public comment at each of the meetings, which I have listened to, has asked for guidance, but to date, they have not addressed these issues specifically or others relating to any local implementation. The focus at the CRC meetings has been primarily focused on medical marijuana to date, and the directive suggested that municipalities may want to look at the medical marijuana rules and regulations for how the commission would anticipate interfacing with municipalities. The director today did say that they would expect to be deferring in large part to municipalities, not expecting to be a big brother in this. So they do think that most municipalities should work themselves on local zoning, etc. So updating zoning ordinances would allow the municipalities to establish areas within the municipality in which various classes of cannabis are permitted and or prohibited, and establish site standards for the establishments. So considerations that may want to be thought about: proximity, obviously, to houses of worship, schools, daycare facilities, halfway houses, and parks. The CRC has not, though, issued any regulations on that topic. One thought is to look, obviously, at the ABC laws in terms of distances there. Consumption, which was something that came up when we had public comment in the past. Per the New Jersey League of Municipalities, the consumption of cannabis items through smoking, vaping, or aerosolizing is prohibited in all places where tobacco smoking is prohibited under the New Jersey Smoke-Free Air Act, and any indoor public places as that term is defined, such as bars, restaurants, sports venues. So under the act, municipalities would need to specifically authorize cannabis consumption areas for them to be permitted. So for example, in a retail cannabis business, they would not be permitted unless we said, yes, they can have consumption there. Recommendations of preferred locations, which was another thing we were asked. We would outline a little bit more in a draft that we would hope to be online within the next 48 hours. We were also asked to broadly consider the impact of cannabis business on existing businesses. So the main things that come up, bringing new customers to the borough and customers visiting other businesses, and then additional traffic on main arteries and parking. Current considerations and concerns regarding the August 21st deadline. So if we don't act by August 21st, we run into a situation where no action equals actually okaying everything. And in order to have obligations in place regarding adopting an ordinance within the 180 days, New Jersey League of Municipalities recommends municipalities take action prior to June 21st. So that's why we're having this conversation right now, due to the timeframes involved to adopt ordinances. So given the time frame and lack of regulations to date from the CRC, the New Jersey League of Municipalities recommends municipalities adopt an ordinance prohibiting all classes of cannabis now. Their reasoning for opting out is that waiting for additional details and regulations will allow municipalities to make more informed decisions. Municipalities, however, could consider permitting one or more classes and prohibiting others. Opt-in is for a minimum of 5 years. Opt-outs can be changed in the future. No action on a class, as I said, equals an opt-in by default. Although the commission has asked municipalities to wait for regulations before opting out, there are concerns about the borough being able then, therefore, to adhere to this August 21st deadline, given the steps required to enact ordinances before then. After the initial 180 days, the commission will enter another 180-day phase during which they will then begin to accept and process applications for licensing. So the CRC must then set a date on which cannabis retailers with licenses or conditional licenses may begin retail sales. Current anticipation is that it would not be later than February of 2022, and they would have to give 30-day notice before the okay to sell. Some municipalities have said that they want cannabis businesses in their communities, but are waiting to introduce any ordinance until the CRC issues more information and regulations. So as I mentioned, a draft ordinance is expected to be available for review, and we're hoping for comments from governing body and community. That should be up within the next 24 to 48 hours, giving us a timeline with a hopeful meeting with the subcommittee for public comment next week on June 9th. June 15th, a hopeful introduction of ordinance with a public hearing. And June 24th, it would then move on to the planning board for review and comments. So we have heard from the Keyport community through their votes supporting legislation and their comments at prior council meetings that they are interested in cannabis business in Keyport. There's a lot to digest, and we are moving along with the August 21st opt-in, opt-out deadline in our sites. However, given the slower than hoped for pace of rules and regulations from the CRC, it is possible that there could be a temporary opt-out for some or all classes if we don't get guidance that we think is important on certain areas, or if there's a delay with the planning board. So that's where we are currently.
Councilor McNamara, thank you very much for all of that. I just want to make an adjustment to communications that I had today because I hadn't heard any updates. So a draft can't be posted until the governing body has seen it. So if a draft could get to Michelle by NJ by June 8th for the close of the agenda, so that the draft will be circulated on the June 15th meeting to the public. As long as the governing body approves that draft, we'll have a resolution on the June 15th deferring it to the planning board, at which point the June 16th, it can go to the planning board for them to review it at the June 24th meeting. So basically the resolution on the June 15th will confirm that the governing body is in line with what the committee is working on. And then hopefully it'll go through the planning board June 24th, and then we'll do an ordinance introduction on July 6th with a hearing on July 20th. So it's just a minor tweak of that the governing body should have a resolution on the agenda after they've had a chance to read it and not just put forward by a committee.
I'm sorry, Mayor. I apologize. I think I was trying to get the dates. So you're saying that we can't have a subcommittee meeting prior to the governing body? What was the term used? A resolution stating that they're in line with the subcommittee's discussion?
So the subcommittee should be presenting it to the full governing body to review, and then the governing body needs a chance to review it, and by resolution, give the nod, and then it goes to the planning board for their review before it goes to an introduction. I didn't say you guys can't meet. I said you just have to have a draft to Michelle by the close of the agenda on Tuesday.
No, I'm sorry. Again, I'm not, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the introduction of the ordinance, let's say if that's on the 15th, then it goes to the planning board, right?
Yeah, we can't introduce something that no one on the governing body except for the three of you have seen, and our attorney hasn't seen yet, and Jay hasn't seen yet. So we can't post something on the website tomorrow that none of the governing body has seen. So we're waiting to introduce until the governing body has seen it. So once they've seen it, they give the nod by resolution to send it to planning board for the 24th. Then once we have all the commentary and know that there's no adjustments, then it would be an introduction on July 6th with a hearing on July 20th. The problem is I thought that the planning board gets it after we introduce it. It's introduced and referred to the planning board. Leslie, can you help us out here?
Yes, I believe you introduce it and then you send it over to the planning board. However, I think what the mayor was saying, to have it circulated first so everyone, council members can see it before it's actually introduced. Mayor, was that what you were saying?
Right. So no one on the governing body has seen it yet. So we can't just, this is a pretty big legislation. So to introduce it and not see it on the same night, I think there's a cleaner process if the governing body gives a review of it before it goes to the planning board, as opposed to just an introduction. An introduction of an ordinance is assuming that everybody is on board. And we don't know yet from the governing body, right? So now you're going to have to publish to the newspaper for an introduction and then potentially change it because the introduction might change. So I think having feedback from the governing body and the planning board to give the nod to what the draft introduction is before you actually publish the actual introduction.
But that's how we always introduce ordinances, especially in zoning ordinances. We put them to the governing body in our packets, and then we can either review them, tweak them, whatever it is. Then it's introduced and published, sent to the planning board, and returned. I thought that was the part. I guess really what we were trying to do is just say to the general public that, here's what we're thinking. We're inviting your comments, and then after we got the comments, then subcommittee was going to say to the governing body, here we go, here's the draft with included all the comments that the public has, and then the council can either make additional changes or whatever, and then introduce it and then refer to the planning board. So it wasn't like an official, here's what we're doing, but more along the lines of giving the public a little more of a, I don't want to say peek behind the curtain, but seeing a little more anticipated legislation for them to comment on before we finalize it and gave it to the governing body for their ultimate approval. That was at least the plan. The publication was nothing more than allowing the public to see the direction that we were headed to and give comments. Of course, that was where we were going with it.
And I'm just saying that the advisory committee should also consult the rest of the governing body members. So not just the public, but by sending something to an introduction, and there's been no dialogue on such a big conversation, and we have no idea. I mean, we did have 2 public sessions already that commentary was supposed to come from, that you guys were taking into consideration to write the draft. So I would think that the draft be ready for the governing body to review as well before setting an introduction, but I'll defer to Ms. London. I spoke with her today, and that was the timeline we came up with, because nothing had been presented otherwise.
I think it's if the governing body would be getting whatever the public's going to be commenting on. I think that's that would be I didn't even question that. So I figured that the governing body could also make its comments before we made an introduction. But Leslie, maybe I'm completely wrong on the timeline. I'll defer to the rest of the council. I was just explaining what we were trying to do in terms of getting the public involved.
And I think we're both saying the same thing. There hasn't been any updates from anyone on the committee to the rest of the governing body. As I said, there was nothing in the packet. There was no timeline given to us. So I had no choice but to speak to Jay and Leslie today to look at a calendar and say, what are we backing up against?
I also have to worry about having too much council conversation with the Open Public Meeting Acts. But again, I will
I'm talking about committee reports in the council meetings. Nothing has come forward, Mr. Good.
I'll defer to the rest of the council.
Ms. London?
It's really what council prefers to do. I think there was an interest, because it's an important piece of legislation, to have the council members look at it first before it's actually introduced. But it doesn't have to be that way, but that was what we were talking about earlier, because again of the significant nature of this particular legislation, to have the opportunity for council members, myself as counsel, legal counsel, to look at it before it actually is introduced. And to provide our input before it gets introduced, so that we're not amending it on first reading when it's introduced.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Tapler.
Thank you. So that's not I don't see that in question. I think what's in question is the public being involved and how we would involve the public is, am I right about that?
So if you interpreted the way Councilman Good isn't laying out the presentation, then their first chance for public to speak would be at the planning board meeting on June 24th.
Mm-hmm.
And then the hearing on July 6th for the governing body for adoption. That's how it's being presented. That's how Councilman Good is presenting it.
Okay. And
How I'm presenting it would be a resolution at the next meeting of a draft copy circulated.
a
For the whole
resolution
governing
to
body
have,
to nod it, but then there would be public comment on that.
a resolution
Part of the agenda.
a resolution to have a draft copy of the ordinance circulated to the.
Circulated so that all of you guys could read something and giving the okay to go to the governing body, to the planning board. But on that agenda, because public can speak on that, they can speak for the resolution. So it gives an extra chance for the public to speak prior to going to the hearing.
On the resolution to put it before the planning board. That's when they would have a chance to speak in front of us, and then they would have a chance to speak in front of the planning board if it passed. And then we would go through the process of adoption, which would also give them a chance to speak.
Introduction and adoption.
Introduction and the process of, yeah, that's what I meant. The introduction and then adoption. But they don't speak, public can speak in public session on the adoption. I mean, for me, the public input is obviously important. I wouldn't mind hearing other council members' input, but if we can provide an opportunity, if the current way we do it, which is what I think Mr. Good was saying, it provides the ample opportunity for the public to participate. That's okay. And maybe the process would be quicker if we did it that way. But if it's 6 one, half dozen the other, I'd like to hear what the other council members. Thank you, Mayor.
Not 6 dozen.
It's adding one meeting, right? So it's not 6 one, half dozen.
Right. It gives the council more chance
to
have public input as opposed to hearing it at the planning board first.
Got you. Okay.
Leslie, are we allowed to refer to the planning board an ordinance that hasn't been officially introduced?
No, you would have to introduce it and then send it over.
So the resolution.
Okay. So that's a great point, Mr. Good.
So the resolution, the first resolution, and Mayor, please correct me, I'm really trying to, the resolution at the next meeting to, at least I guess call it, publish it to everybody, then would allow for the July 6th introduction of it. Once we introduce it in July 6th, then we would wait until the July, I don't have the date in front of you, but the end of the July month planning board meeting for them to comment on it, which then would, and they send it back, and presumably if they're okay or conforms, then the August meeting would be the one where we would possibly adopt it. Is that, that was the timeline?
That wasn't my timeline, but now that it's confirmed that that has to be introduced first, then we're backed up against a wall now, because if they cancel the July planning board meeting, which often happens, we have to bank on the June 24th planning board meeting. So then we are going to have to introduce it, and public comment's going to have to go to planning board.
I'm wondering if you could just post a draft for public comment and council comment also. Make the comments go to the committee makes changes as needed, and then introduce it for the next meeting. I don't know if you have enough time to do that. if something, Councilwoman mentioned that it can be posted within the next 24, 48 hours.
And that's what Councilwoman McNamara mentioned, but you haven't seen it yet. Jay hasn't yet. I mean, we're posting something on our website that majority of the people don't even know exists. But if that's the only way, because we're on a time constraint now, I'll leave it to the governing body.
It could be substantially changed or maybe not, once everyone looks at it. And then what you're actually introducing may be different from what's going to be posted. But,
Yep.
Prior to it being posted in 24 or 48 hours, can it be reviewed by the professionals first? Is that an option?
Yeah, sure.
And then once the professionals see it and okay the legality and whatnot of it, then we can do what you just suggested, Leslie?
Yes.
Ms. London, would you recommend that it gets circulated to the governing body as well as to yourself and whomever else you recommend at this point, or that we wait on the governing body as well?
You could wait if council members feel fine with that and send it to the professionals, as Councilman mentioned. We give our input because we're just looking at it to make sure that it covers all the bases of the statute, and raise any questions that you may want to consider that maybe isn't in the draft, so that you can do that and then have it available for first reading introduction on the next meeting. So if I get something, Jay, and anyone else gets it within the day, we could have it read and commented on back to the committee within a day or two. And we could still stay with the same time frame of having it introduced at your next meeting.
And we'd be, so after you comment on it, we would then, you think it would be okay to do as Councilman Good was saying, put it up for public and governing body to look at and give us any feedback before an official introduction? Because as you said, I mean, it could totally change once we have that input. Is that okay to proceed that way?
It's being proposed as a draft, yes. I don't see a problem with that. Otherwise, you have on the introduction day, everyone commenting, and you may have some good suggestions, and we're rewriting it during the meeting.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But due to timing, we don't have any option other than that, correct?
Because we're on a tight time frame, yes. So if it can be reviewed by the professionals, go back to the committee members, then be posted for public comment. Any other council members, comments or suggestions, work it, revise it as needed, and then have it introduced for your next meeting.
Okay.
And if I can, I mean, just to be clear, so that the public is aware, I mean, a lot of these timeline constraints had nothing to do with necessarily our actions. I mean, the committee itself wasn't formed until April 20th, and even the state CRC,
Yes.
was mid-April. So the 180 days was put out there back in February, but we didn't have anywhere to go for the first 2 months, in large part with a lot of what we're working on now.
You're absolutely correct. And regardless of what you adopt, it may still be subject to change based on the regulations, because we have no idea what the regulations are going to say at this point. So there may be something that requires further tweaking once the regulations are implemented by the CRC.
And do you have any thoughts or comments on, doing this work and then at the 11th hour, kind of taking the suggestion from the League of Municipalities to opt out temporarily until we have more clarification, or what some I see other communities are doing?
Many are opting, or not, I should say, prohibiting all at this point until the regulations come out because of the uncertainty. And I believe you were probably on the CRC meeting today. That was very long. And just a lot of questions and comments from people. They have no, they need direction. They were asking for direction. And the CRC is not prepared at this point with the regulations. So you have some towns that know for certain what they want to do. They've been probably approached by entities and they have a lot of land. They know where they want it. So they have come out. There are a few of those who have done that. And I think a larger number at this point are opting to prohibit everything and decided to wait for the regulations. So you have a mixed bag of what each municipality is doing based on the town itself and what they want to do. You know, if you know for certain that you want to have retail or manufacturing and this is where you want it, this is where you don't want it, because you have to keep in mind anything that you allow in the ordinance now, you can't change for 5 years. And there may be something in your the regulations that come out that may change your mind for some reason. So once you're in for 5 years.
In any of the meetings that both of you have sat in, has there been any push for communication for them to extend the August 21st deadline, or does everyone just want the August 21st deadline to get here so that they can come up with this next piece? I mean, I'm not gonna, to your point, Councilman McNamara, I agree that this didn't come forward until it wasn't passed until February from the state to begin with. But this was part of the whole referendum issue. And a lot of people had issues with it because none of this was already factored in or vetted out. But this goes back to Mr. Lane asking for several years why we hadn't been acting on it, but how can we act on it if we don't know what's coming forward? So it's just a revolving circle, so to speak. But has there been any
no, it seems like there will not be an extension, and that's why I believe the league has taken the position recommending it's best for those who have really no definite idea what they want to do, just to prohibit everything, because you will have the opportunity to change your mind and opt in once the regulations are here.
Okay. Any other members of the governing body have a commentary? Okay, next on unfinished business, road opening on Main Street. Jay, do we have anything on that?
You're muted, Jay.
Better? Okay, thank you. I believe, as everyone is aware, this issue came about as a result of an error in the process that was followed by one of our local utilities, specifically related to obtaining a county road opening permit that was should have been directed to the borough, as the road opening actually took place on a municipal road over which the county had no jurisdiction. In any event, there's specific, the initial issue dealt with the specific determination as to how to proceed. I know there has been some suggestion made that the utility should be required to provide a curb to curb milling and paving for an extended period of the roadway. The borough engineer, I believe Trevor is still on, had recommended that as much as that would make sense in certain instances, in this particular case, because of the length of the seams, the two seams that would be resulting from that curb to curb milling and paving would actually be more of a hindrance to our overall goal, which is to preserve the integrity of the road surface. So I would ask Trevor to perhaps elaborate on that more specifically in terms of the process for utilizing the infrared. The secondary issue was actually a revision to our road opening process, and there have been some suggestions made and some proposed changes to the ordinance that covers our road opening process, and that will be submitted to the governing body once we get through this first issue.
Okay. COVID-19 Borough Committee update.
Mayor, there's been some, I'm gonna speak. If Lorianne, you gonna speak or?
No, you can start off the day. I was trying to get off of mute. I apologize.
That's okay. I was just gonna, I didn't know if you wanted to speak, but you sort of took the initiative on that if you want. We did exchange emails, but I'll turn it over to Lorianne.
So thank you, Mayor. So, and Mr. Councilman Fotopoulos. So with the discussions that we've had, the main issue with reopening 100% to the public, especially for council meetings, is the audio-visual aspect of that. We have to be able, from what I understand, we have to be able to provide for opening up to the public completely the aspect for people to log in via Zoom. And Ms. London or Jay, if you know something different, please let us know that. So without that component, we do not have the ability to have our council meetings, planning board meetings, or anything that has to be open to the full public in chambers at this time. If we were going to do I don't want to say, for lack of a better term, a soft open, we were considering a July 1st date where we could open the Borough Hall to the general public and use the windows that we have in the offices on the second floor. So anybody going up to see a tax assessor, use the window there. Same thing with the health department, construction, and the administrative offices. This way we don't have general public walking in and out of all of our, smaller offices for our employees, and everybody can speak through the window in the hallway, whatever they decide to do based on their comfort level. If we were to open it up to the meetings and committees that do not need to be open to the full public, that we would provide cleaning solutions and wipes for them to use prior to meeting and after they leave to make sure the chambers and conference room is left in as clean as it can be. There was discussion from Council President Good that the fire department has some sort of misting cleaning apparatus of sorts that we could perhaps use to assist in cleaning Borough Hall in the evenings. That is, Council President Good and Councilman Fotopoulos, if I've left anything out, that's kind of the discussion we have had. But as far as the council meetings and planning board meetings, I believe that's where we are right now until we have the ability to open up via Zoom as well.
I did see that that the governor has opened it up. I just don't know what. I think that we can open up utilizing the windows, the Borough Hall, as soon as mechanically feasible, for lack of a better word. So July 1st sounds good to me, like you said, using the windows, barriers, but I'd like to see if there can be a solution that we can implement as soon as possible for, AV solution, audiovisual solution, we can implement as soon as possible for council chambers. And we talked about that, but Jay, is there an a quick approach to a quick workaround for audiovisual to get us in the council chambers, or until we get something more established, or can we get something established relatively quickly so we could start having in-person public meetings? And number three, there was a good question, is the requirement to have AV public access something that was handed down as a law from the state?
Yeah, the first question, I'll take them kind of in reverse order, is that there really are two separate issues, as has been outlined by others. That the first question is in terms of the regular day-to-day operations of the borough. And the governor's order was somewhat confusing, at least in my mind. There is some language that while the indoor mask requirements have been lifted and the social distancing requirements indoor have also been relaxed or restricted or eliminated, they do not apply unilaterally to all operations. And in fact, the executive order provided the ability, and in fact mandates that those state agencies that are open to the public, and the most commonly used sample is a Division of Motor Vehicle. Those offices that are actually open to the public, where the public's coming in and transacting businesses, those have not been lifted. There is some difference of opinion in terms of even throughout the state, various municipalities, as to what level of reopening they are going, as far as either maintaining by appointment only, which is essentially the way we have been operating here, while the facilities have not been completely open to the public. All of the services that we provide have been maintained through either some alternative method, most suitably the issue of appointments for those issues that require any business that requires face-to-face transactions. So that's the first part of it. And as has been mentioned, there are a number of protocols that were in place once COVID hit that would facilitate opening up or relaxing our current requirements. One of the other questions that would need to be addressed is whether we would require individuals, the visitors coming in, to have masks. There is also some, what I would call, a sliding scale of implementation. Some places are still requiring that visitors use masks. Some have made it more of a recommendation for those that are not vaccinated. I will tell you that there are employees, while the vast majority of our employees here have been vaccinated for a number of reasons, some have not been. So we still do need to maintain a safe work environment. So while July 1st seems an appropriate timeline at this point, frankly, the governor's ban or lifting of the requirement for indoor mask usage is still fairly new. That just happened last Friday. And again, our primary goal is to provide a safe work environment. So I would recommend that we go somewhat slow on that. Perhaps we would know more in another week to 10 days as to if July 1 is an appropriate time. The second issue, which is the conducting of public meetings. Again, we have been operating under this virtual world now for some 16 months and maintained all services as well as the public meetings. There are some fairly complicated, I won't call them complicated, I guess, some specific requirements in terms of us opening the building for public meetings. Again, while there is currently not a requirement for the social distancing that was in place at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, there is still, from a practical standpoint, a need to maintain distance more than what would be found in a typical council meeting room. Again, if just in round numbers, if we are to reduce the occupancy of this building, this room for meetings, which I believe is set at some 80 occupants. If we have if our expectation, and there would be times when certain meetings, whether it's planning board or borough council meetings, we would exceed the occupancy limit that would be reasonable with minimal social distancing, then we are required to make the meeting available to the public. And again, there are a couple of ways that we can do that. We have looked at following the example that has been used by our local Board of Education for the conducting of their meetings, which is fairly, I would call, relatively minimal in terms of equipment, but it does require personnel that we currently do not have on staff, nor do we have the ability to contract that on an easy basis. We have begun some discussions, or previously we had discussions with the Board of Ed that they would provide that to us on a cost sharing or shared service basis. And I think that once the school gets out of their, with the completion of their school year, they will be in a much better position to provide us with that assistance.
Would that assistance also be in the conference rooms? And because I know once the building opened and we resumed all the committee meetings, committees such as recreation, they don't even fit in the conference room as it is now, never mind socially distanced. And if a member isn't vaccinated and wants to be videoed in, right, how would they do that, as well as the small conference room? So we have recreation, recycling, harbor.
Yeah, there are a number of committees, Mayor, that I would expect we would have to reshuffle our schedule. And so this would become the primary meeting room. This room that the council chamber courtroom would be the primary room for all of those committee meetings. Because again, most of the small conference rooms, while they, under regular circumstances, they would be suitable for up to 10 persons. As you've mentioned, there may be some members of the public or members of the committees that, for whatever reason, are not comfortable in utilizing that room that's designed for small gatherings, not under normal circumstances.
Can I make a suggestion, Mayor?
Mm-hmm.
Jay, since you've got a larger amount of information, obviously, would you be open to facilitating the next meeting, hopefully this week or early next week, between the three council members and yourself?
Certainly, I'm available.
Okay. So if you could, and are you okay with that, Councilwoman Davidson?
I have no problem with that. Are we going to be then working towards another update based on anything new that comes out, and then at the meeting on the 15th, then see where we stand for the July 1st date and go from there? Is that going to be a moving target, most likely, the way it sounds, which, given the amount of information coming and going, seems to make sense to me as well.
I think so, but I think we can also work towards facilitating the means to make it happen when it's ready. In other words, let's talk about what it's going to cost to get AV equipment in here to do it. Let's hopefully we can utilize some the American the CARES Act money for some of that. But that's the discussion we can have, I guess, on the side, and then bring it back to the next council meeting. If you're okay with that, and everybody, but everything you said, plus let's start putting the pieces in place that we need to, that we know we're going to need. That's all.
Councilor, ask a question. If we were to meet for a council meeting, do we have any choice, given the circumstances, to have the council meeting in full in the chambers and then have the audiovisual set up for all the public? And then we can zoom in from them, but we don't allow public in the building. Are we allowed to do that?
Local Government Services has not issued new guidelines on that, but the original mandate was no. If the entire board was in person, then the public had to be in person.
With the understanding that if the occupancy of the room was exceeded, that then you could essentially go to the hybrid, so that those that could not be accommodated, members of the public could not be accommodated in person, could be accommodated through a virtual manner.
Correct, sorry, I misspoke. If the full board, council, whichever meeting you're talking about, that had to follow Open Public Meeting Act was in person, then it could be hybrid. But you had to have members of the public and video.
And now that we know that, hopefully part of what the committee will do is come up with the means and the recommendations to get the proper equipment started to, and it could be.
And hopefully something changes, because that's the original mandate from last April, right? So why they haven't changed that, if they have, I'm not aware of it. I haven't received anything come forward. I don't know if Ms. London or Jay has, but those are the guidelines we've had to follow since last year.
100%.
They haven't changed.
100%. It's just, I think one thing we've learned, right, Mayor, is we can't really wait for them. We have to act on what we have to act on what we know we can act on. So,
or be ready for when it's lifted.
There you go. So
speaking to that point, can I just suggest to the committee to also keep in mind of the extra manpower to our clerk's office, that this is all going to, because every single meeting for the rest of the year is going to have to be publicly noticed. And she already has a lot on her plate with upcoming election day and so forth. So whatever decisions are discussed, please keep all of that stuff in mind as well.
So Jay, you'll set up the meeting?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Attorney's report.
I just wanted to provide an update, which probably most know already, but at the last council meeting, a question was asked regarding using park that receives Green Acres funding and whether or not a political event could occur at the park. I had looked at the Green Acres regulations and statute and did not find anything. And then I contacted Green Acres at the DEP and got a response back from the Bureau of Legal Services and Stewardship, and was advised, quote, a political candidate can hold a political meeting, event, fundraiser on Green Acres encumbered parkland, provided one, the individual followed the process in place for anyone to rent a portion of the park for an event, i.e. birthday party, end of year, barbecue, etc. Secondly, and as important, the opportunity to rent space at a park for a meeting, event, fundraiser is open and available to anyone. Permission to use a portion of the park cannot be based on the affiliated political party. If the town and political candidate use the same process available to the public at large to secure a portion of the park for their event, the town is following Green Acres rules. So I just wanted to share that because it was raised in public at the last meeting.
Great, thank you. Also in public in the last meeting, there was discussion about the case law that was presented to us regarding sidewalks and what the municipality is, what portion we're liable for. And I believe you had an update on that as well. Since that case law has come forward to present such that the municipality is required when attention has been brought to a matter at hand, that notice of violation has to go out, follow. And I think you have all the timeline as well as combined with our ordinances.
Right, your ordinance is consistent with the statutory authority that allows municipality to require the property owner to be responsible. The case law that was mentioned dealt with tort liability, so it wasn't exactly on point. It did provide immunity to property owners, but that was with respect to tort liability and injury or something occurring on the property. But your ordinance is consistent with the statute that provides the structure for sidewalk law in New Jersey, giving the municipalities the authority to adopt ordinances providing for repairs to be done.
And it confirms that the sidewalks are the property owners, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Also, I forgot under unfinished business. I was looking to see if Trevor was still on. Yes,
Yes, Mayor.
Mr. Taylor,
I'm still.
great. Under unfinished business, it's not listed on here because we didn't know this was going to happen. But as you and the governing body are aware, while everyone else was enjoying a nice, relaxing, rainy Sunday on Memorial Day weekend, myself and other people were dealing with, once again, having sores pouring into our basement, or at least mine. I'm still waiting for confirmation from some people that weren't home to check theirs. Do you have an estimate of when we're going to have the report for when the sewer line was cambered?
Yes, I actually finished that, and I believe that was sent over to Mr. Delaney just today. I will be meeting with him tomorrow to go over it with him in person. But there is a recommendation in the report for both Atlantic Street and Church Street.
Thank you, because 4 times in less than 5 months is not really a pleasant situation. And also, Mr. Taylor, do you have an update on, I know you gave one at the planning board, but for the council members, do you have an update on the inquiries about the Waverly Street project and when they plan on, I know you indicated at the planning board meeting that they may consider coming back for reconsideration to waive the requirement of the underground utilities. But if that doesn't get approved, then they're gonna have to cut the road up. But at the same point, all those residents are living with poor road conditions. So do you wanna just give an update on that, please?
Correct. Since the last council meeting, I did speak to the developer, and he indicated that he is going to be submitting an application to the planning board to lift the resolution requirement to install utilities underground. So I provided the developer with the application that they need to fill out for the planning board. I will make sure to follow up with him this week to make sure he follows through with that. But as you did indicate, I don't want them to pave the road with the utilities not being installed underneath the roadway. If in fact they do need to go into the roadway as opposed to under the sidewalk. So we're going to be pushing him to get that done. And if the planning board does not approve that, then to push the utilities to get those underground so that the paving can get done this year. But like I said, I'll be following up with the developer on the application to the planning board.
Mayor, if I may, just a question. I'm not sure I heard it. Just to clarify that the Waverly paving is curb to curb. That is the entire stretch of the roadway, or I should say the curb to curb in front of the development.
Correct. It's curb to curb from First Street to their southern property line. So essentially the entire property frontage.
That was a question though raised last year, Trevor, that the opposite corner, their home actually faces First Street, but they put stone there with a wood piece. Was there a sidewalk there before, and are they going to pour a sidewalk for that property owner? Have they been in communication with that property owner? Because when you're saying curb to curb, there isn't a curb on the western side of that corner.
Correct. There was grass there previously. There was never sidewalk there. So we did propose, or we did include in our punch list that they had to restore that back to the original conditions, which would be removal of the stone and installation of grass. But there was not a requirement to put curb on that side of the street.
Okay. Thank you. Jay and Trevor, what was the conclusion as far as presenting the Church Street?
As Trevor indicated, Mr. Taylor indicated, we are meeting tomorrow and we'll finalize a plan to move forward once we review both the sanitary sewer report and how that will correlate with the scheduled improvements to Church.
And will you be having, we'll just do it on a council meeting, or are you going to have a?
I think the answer to that will depend on the review of the sanitary report. It will either be depending on how extensive we think that will be, it'll either be part of a governing body council meeting, or we may do a public, provide a public opportunity for residents to come in during, again, with the limitations of some of the technology, to come in and review the plans on a either a appointment basis, scheduled at a time when they could review the plans and provide comment.
Okay, and the plans I'm hoping are going to include the sidewalks along our own borough property on the 2nd Street parking lot?
Yes, and part of that discussion, Mayor, I know it has come up before, is that the general, this is not a sidewalk project in general, but there are selected sidewalks that will be done. The standard that has been utilized in the past is that in those instances where the grade of the road or well, let's use that one first. The grade of the road has changed such that the curbs and in some cases, the sidewalks that are adjacent to curbs, in those instances, the sidewalks are replaced. In instances where there were no sidewalks and sidewalks are being installed, obviously, those would be an instance where they would be done. But in general, none of the projects that have been undertaken in the last 5 years have included the complete replacement of sidewalks. Generally, the projects have been the curb radius at intersections where handicap ramps are installed. In those instances where sidewalks are constructed as part of the curb and the curbing is replaced, in those cases, the sidewalks are done. And I believe those are the 2 instances. I don't know, Trevor, if there was a 3rd instance or scenario under which sidewalks are addressed.
I think you covered them all. I think just to point out again, I think you mentioned at the handicap ramps, but if there is sidewalk attached to curbs that have to be replaced throughout the project, obviously we can't take out the curbs without taking out the sidewalk. So in instances where the sidewalk is connected to the curb, we would be required to, when we do take the curb out, to take the sidewalk out as well and replace the sidewalk adjacent to the curb.
Okay, thank you. And then tomorrow when you guys meet, can you also have an update ready for the next meeting for one of the corners on Main Street where they did have the ADA,
Yes.
but there's outstanding issues. I believe it's Walling and Main.
I was thinking
Pershing and Main.
Pershing,
and Main.
yes.
All right, but if we can communicate with that homeowner as well as to how we're going to rectify his property there.
Yes, and I did reach out to the contractor for that next week. They're still under bond. We have not closed them out, and I just requested that they get out to that property as soon as possible to complete the restoration there. But again, I'll follow up and hopefully it'll be done by next council meeting.
Great, thank you so much.
Mayor, just one more thing too. I apologize, but I think I was on mute before when you were talking about the trench restoration on Main Street. If there's no objection from the council, I can write a letter to New Jersey Natural Gas just requiring that they do the infrared repair on the 3 foot by 3 foot patch. As Jay indicated, I think it's a smaller patch. I'm just concerned that if we do have the mill, from curb to curb for the property frontage, which is about, I think it's either 40 or 50 feet, then we're just opening up more seams across the entire width of the roadway, as opposed to a 3 foot by 3 foot infrared repair, which is it's essentially in the shoulder of the road where the parking would be, so it doesn't get too much vehicular traffic over it. So that would just be my recommendation, do the 3 foot by 3 foot infrared repair at that location.
I would need the governing body to weigh in on that one. Council President Good, I'll start with you.
I'm fine with the smaller infrared.
Councilman Topless.
As am I.
Councilwoman Pacheco?
Same here. Thank you. So come back.
Okay. You weren't on the top anymore. Sorry, I didn't call on you second.
No worries.
Councilwoman McDermott?
I'm fine with it, with infrared.
Councilwoman Davidson?
Same. I'm okay with it.
And Councilwoman McNamara?
Fine with it, thank you.
Does that give you the information you need, Trevor and Ms. London? Mr. Taylor and Ms. London, sorry.
Yes, that's good with me to go back at New Jersey Natural Gas to have them make the repair. And then as Mr. Delaney said, I'll have some recommendations for revisions to the road opening permit. Wrapping those up, I should have those to Mr. Delaney before the next council meeting.
Thank you. Anyone else on the governing body before we open to the public?
I just have a quick update. Ms. Lane had asked about the Mpp packet. On the April 6, 2021 council meeting, was part of the packet resolution 103-21, which was approved. And that's the full Mpp plan from year 2 through to 5. So it starts at page 74 and goes all the way through to 81.
Great.
Just want to make sure we do that. Thank you.
Can I have a motion to open to the public, please?
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we'll go by a show of hands first. Mr. Graff?
Yes, Elmer J. Graham Jr., 22 St. Peter's Place. A few things. First of all, about the borough sidewalks. On some mornings, I walk through Keyport Borough, and I look at some of these sidewalks, and with all these grants that we're getting from Monmouth County, you know, and this has been the way for the past few years now, why are some of these borough sidewalks in terrible shape? Like they have cracks in them. You know, you almost trip on some of them, some of the way, and everything like that. Why are they not looking as better as they should?
Throughout the borough or borough property?
So again, well, in front of the house, throughout the borough.
Right. So as we indicated, that has been brought to our attention that it's a requirement of the municipality, once something's been pointed out, that we have to issue a notice of violation. So property maintenance office has been notified to put the properties that have been brought to our attention on notice.
Okay, because God forbid if someone trips on those sidewalks, that couldn't the boroughs be sued for that?
If we don't send them a notice, or and that would expire within, I think, 30 days. Ms. London can correct me if I'm wrong. And then if it's not repaired within 30 days, we have the ability to issue a summons each day until it's repaired. Is that correct, Ms.
Okay.
London? She said yes.
Okay. And I understand we got a new landscaper for Keyport Borough. And who is that new landscaper?
Scenic View.
Say again?
Scenic View.
Okay. And why did John Vidiello withdraw his contract to Keyport?
He withdrew his proposal.
Okay. Can we get a reason why?
I believe it's partly of what I said earlier. It was also in the press conference with the county commissioners, so that it was a staffing. Mr. Delaney, can you confirm? I didn't communicate with him, so I don't know personally.
I mean,
Yes, there was concern that he could not provide the services due to a shortage of manpower available.
all right. And my opinion, as far as the new landscaper goes, I think Mr. John Merle should be getting credit for helping you get that new landscaper. After all, he showed these landscapers around the borough and everything like that. But that's my opinion.
Thank you.
Okay,
I know Mr. Merle was trying to help, but Scenic View already had been contacted several times to put in a proposal, and they were working on that, and it came in that following weekend. after
Okay,
the
well,
zoning meeting.
you all should give him credit for it. One more question. Are we going to have any more Veterans Committee meetings?
When we have more information to move forward, yes. We had a big
Okay.
Memorial Day ceremony yesterday, though.
Okay, well, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else by show of hands? Anyone else on the phone line?
John,
Michael Lane.
Go ahead, Mr. Lane. I'll yield to you.
Oh, John, thank you. It's most generous. On the marijuana discussion, and I appreciate the team's input and timeline. The June 24th Planning Board meeting is already backed up with the food pantry continuation, with Mariner Village continuation, and with 31 West Front Street that was withdrawn and told to renotice for the 24th meeting. And
31
so,
West Front Street was not told they can go on the 24th.
all right, well, I'm sorry. Definitely the Mariner Village and the food pantry are on the 24th.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't imagine that those won't take the whole night. And I would think you would want to have any public session on marijuana as the first thing on the agenda. And I listened carefully to the discussion, and I heard a couple of things. One, if you get it wrong, it's going to take 5 years before you can fix it. That if you deny all marijuana now, you can, in a few months after the denial, 6 months after the denial, you can then update your ordinances to allow. And so I can't imagine what the rush is right now that we wouldn't just adopt the ordinance to deny. And then when the things settle down at the state level, and when you have the time to have public hearings and get public input, then to add the ordinance changes to reflect what's really good for the borough. And I know when we worked on the zoning ordinance, it wasn't rushed. We spent probably close to a year on it. And so to spend another 3 or 4 months on the marijuana ordinance is really something that would protect all the interest of all the people in Keyport. So I urge you not to rush this and just to move it to the side until things settle down at the state level, until you have the full public input hearing. Thank you. Also, one other item on the zoning enforcement. What happens, who's responsible when a use change results in a new zoning item kicking in? For example, if you change from a gym to a bar, there's a whole set of zoning regulations that relate to the bar operation, like minimum parking requirements. And so who's responsible for making sure that when we make these use changes, that all these zoning ordinance rules are met? And why that we're not having planning board hearings on these issues?
So can you give me an example?
Give you an example? Absolutely. When take McDonough's, tremendous increase in the square footage of the bar operation. And that drives a tremendous increase in the parking requirement. Mayor, you are aware of the 31 West Front, where there's a proposal for a restaurant and bar operation, very large, that generates a huge increase in square footage, that generates a parking deficiency bill for $253,000. If I then relate that to the other two bar changes in the Keyport, there's probably $750,000 to $1 million in parking deficiencies that haven't been dealt with. How can this happen?
So the 31 West Front Street, as you know, is before the planning board. But as far as the liquor license expansion, and that is not part of the requirements that it has to go to zoning. But each application and use application does go through the zoning office before they can even get a CO. Is that correct, Jay? If it's a change of use?
Yes, any change of use goes through a zoning review by the zoning officer, and the zoning officer makes the determination as to whether it can be approved or does require either variances or a site plan review and approval.
Well, I'll give you the example. The second floor at McDonough's was a computer operation. It has now been converted to a bar operation. And in addition, outside parking spaces for the bar operation have been converted to bar operation. This is a huge change in use and square footage of use.
Well, just so we're clear, the approval to expand the liquor license does not in and of itself represent a zoning review or approval. So
I understand that.
So I'm not sure I'm not aware of the specifics in this case as to the status of any zoning permit that may have been applied for. I could check on that if you're indicating that change has already taken place.
Well, the 3DB distillery is already open. That change has taken place from a gym. That change added thousands of square feet to the bar operation, And we have an ordinance, 25:1-18, that sets parking requirements as a function of square feet or the number of tables and chairs.
I'd be happy to take a look at that. I know that there were other issues that you had raised specifically regarding the use there. I can tell you from the discussion that you and I had, as well as the review that I conducted at that time, the zoning approval had been granted some 18 months ago. I was in our discussions and in the issues that you raised to the governing body, that specific issue had not been part of it, but I'd be happy to take a look at it.
I would appreciate that. I will send you some email on it. But as I say, my calculations say we're well over $500,000, approaching $750,000 that we should be collecting. And it should go into a parking fund.
I understand what you're saying, Mr. Arena. But I just wanted to point out that it doesn't just automatically, there is a process up in the construction office. So.
Well, that's what I'm concerned about, how the process dropped.
Okay.
Dropped.
All right, thank you. Anyone else on the phone lines? Mr. Mueller, I think you were next.
Yes, John Merla, 34 Broad Street. Ms. London, I must apologize. When you gave your report regarding the Green Acres, I could hardly hear you. I would just ask, can you repeat what your findings were? I'm sorry about that.
Yes, I had mentioned that I had contacted Green Acres. I had initially looked at the statute and regulations prior to contacting them. I didn't see anything, so reached out to their office, the Bureau of Legal Services. The worker or the employee mentioned a political candidate can hold a political meeting, event, fundraiser on Green Acres encumbered parkland, provided the individual followed the process in place for anyone to rent a portion of the park for an event. Secondly, and important, just as important, The opportunity to rent space at a park for a meeting, event, fundraiser is open and available to anyone. Permission to use a portion of the park cannot be based on the affiliated political party. If the town and political candidate use the same process available to the public at large to secure a portion of the park for the event, the town is following Green Acres rules. So essentially it says the park can be open to anyone as long as the rules are applied evenly to anyone who seeks to use it.
Okay, and thank you very much, Ms. London. So basically what we're saying is then there is a fee associated. That's why I'd asked earlier regarding the school. When the school wanted to do the waterfront, we were waiving a fee. And in this situation, under that communication, a fee was never mentioned. And you have mentioned twice the word rent. So to me, that means a fee. So we didn't talk, we only talked about having insurance, which the applicant did give the borough a copy of insurance for Cedar Street Park, specifically naming Cedar Street Park. So that's my question to the council. If we're going to do this in the future, which I oppose, but if we are going to do it and allow it, are we going to charge? Or are we not going to charge? I really think we need to do our homework on that. My second question of the night, Mayor, is I'd like to know, now that it was brought up, and I'll just follow up with Mr. Graham's comment that I had nothing to do with scenic. I did inquire and bring in 2 other landscape companies to try and help the borough, and both have submitted proposals to the clerk and administrator, our administrator. And I understand scenic was hired, but I have to ask you this question. How were they approved? By resolution, or because I was at the last meeting and I don't remember that being discussed, unless it was an emergency or.
No, they were approved last week, but after the deadline of the agenda for it to be on this one. But because it's a proposal, sorry, hold on 1 second, just about to die. Hold on, laptop. It was not approved prior to the agenda closing for this meeting. So, but it's not a requirement for a proposal threshold to be listed, but I have asked for it to be listed on the next agenda.
It's not, it is a requirement. You're expending taxpayer dollars, and it's a public contract. They had to submit a copy of insurance, a license, and they have to be registered in the state of New Jersey. That's a public contract.
It's a public document, and that's, the administrator liberty to authorize that, and then it would be in the payment of bills for the council to approve. But because I do want it to be transparent, I have asked for that to be on the agenda.
So when you put it on the agenda, you're going to basically alert the public what the award was of the contract?
That's what I've asked for, yes.
Okay. My other question is, does the 2021 budget include monies to be spent for the purchase or the repairing of municipal fire hydrants?
I know I had requested for it to be.
Yeah.
So I'll defer that to Jay. But
I didn't see it in the budget that I reviewed. That's why I'm asking. Maybe it's something under something else. I checked the water sewer budget and the municipal. There was no specific line item saying purchase of new hydrants or replacement or repair.
Right. So it depends on how many are out and whether they're going to do it as one large cumbersome project, or, as you know, fire hydrants go out on a rotating basis throughout the borough, whether they're from accident or what have you, and DPW has them to be able to replace them. It depends on the extensive damage to the lines. But as you know, there are some that have been out for a while. So hopefully, there's one on Maple Place that we actually moved that line and we had hoped to remove the one that's next to Country Farms. However, they don't make the fitting for that anymore. So that fire hydrant essentially can't be removed. And it's going to basically have a permanent cover over it unless we want to spend, I think it was upwards when Mr. Gallo was here, an extensive amount of money to redo that whole line to have a non-functioning hydrant there anyway. Because that one was moved over on the corner of Broad, actually next to Scenic View.
Okay.
But Mr. Delaney, you want to piggyback on what the plan is to get the other lines up and working?
Yes, first of all, to address Mr. Merla's question, although not specifically identified as such, the water sewer utility budget does include funds for water and sewer improvements, included in which would, of course, be fire hydrants. And likewise, the capital program plan, 6-year plan that's included in the budget also identifies substantial water and sewer improvements that include hydrants among many other improvements, including water main replacements, as well as sanitary sewer replacements. So although not, again, specifically identified, there are funds in the budget for hydrant replacement.
Okay, thank you.
If I can add, John, real quick, we took heed not only of the mayor's request on this, but also speaking with the fire marshal in town, Mr. Vecchio, had expressed concern about certain issues with the fire hydrants. So I think the plan, I'm hoping the plan is moving forward, that this will be an ongoing capital plan item moving forward. But I do have a question. So Mayor, I think when a hydrant gets hit or something like that, if there's a shutoff valve, we are prepared to replace that within the incidental budget and whatnot. Is that correct?
There's that's if it's a regular repair, yes. And then also there's also supposed to be reimbursement from the insurance company from which an accident took place.
John, I'm sorry, Mayor.
That's okay, but the case on the one on Maple, that is not a resolvable issue.
Right, and the case of the one on Maple, real quick, loops into what I discovered over the last year as well, is that on some of our older hydrants in antiquity, valves weren't installed, so that just makes the process that much more expensive and difficult. So, but we've included that all in the plan, and hopefully, as streets especially get done in town, we'll be able to take care of some of the deficiencies. Thanks for bringing it up.
No problem. Mr. Merla, can I also go back to something that you were talking about earlier regarding the parks? Yes, what Ms. Lennon was interpreting was regarding the fees, but it's really about a process. So as long as the same process. So right now, as you and I talked earlier in the meeting, Cedar Street, quote unquote, park and Benjamin Terry Park does not have a fee on the application. So, but they are required to use of property form and the insurance as you indicated. So that process would be the same. But I do emphasize that that's been my 5th year of asking for that whole process to be cleaned up because it's not consistent. So I just wanted to go back to that. Sorry.
You bring up a very good point, and my follow-up to that would be: so you are on the understanding of Benjamin Terry Park and Cedar Street Park are 2 different parks?
Yep.
Okay. Mayor, the other thing was I was wondering, the irrigation system on the waterfront, is there a problem with that? It hasn't been on yet. Is it down? I noticed a leak last week, but I was wondering if it's up and running now.
I reported that leak last week. I know that was fixed, but I have not had confirmation. I have asked several times, so as Councilman Davidson, as to whether that irrigation system is functioning, as well as the one in Benjamin Terry Veterans Park. I have not received an answer.
And as a follow-up to that, are the floodgates working?
the one that is closer to Mike's sub is working.
Yeah.
But they actually put additional cones out because this was a king tide last week.
Yeah. Okay. Two other quick items. I'm not sure if anybody's aware on this council and mayor,
You muted yourself, Mr. Merlo.
if anyone
Can you
knows-
start that over because you muted
sorry.
yourself for a minute? That's okay. But we do need to wrap it up soon because we're
Yes,
way
in
over
the
the
old,
5-minute
the
limit.
old borough hall, there was a plaque, and it was had all borough residents that served in World War II, and I was always wondering like where that went, and a resident questioned me today on it, and I didn't have the answer. Could that have went to the historic museum? It was a plaque, just like the fire department has in each fire home where all the members and the years they served. This was specifically Keyport residents that served in World War II. It was, I'm going back, so I know that way before yourself and many council members, but maybe we can just check into that. Someone's got to know where it went. And two real quick items, Mayor. While I was driving around with the two landscapers, showing them the 21 different parks, playgrounds, and things in town, I noticed something that I think the borough should be proactive on, even if it's a 5-year plan. There's a lot of street signs. Some are blue, some are green, some are faded, some are even missing. And I think we should be, I think everything should be consistent, one color, new. I know when we place signs now, they're blue, they're big. The other ones were green, some are faded. Just a thought, maybe the council can do it. And I'll wrap up with this. I'd just like to read this into the record tonight. We, the undersigned residents and businesses of Keyport, hereby recommend sidewalks and curbs are installed and included in the Church Street Road Improvement Resurfacing Project for the continuing safety of our residents, including our children. We further ask that the Borough Council and Mayor, once televised and inspected water and sewer lines made available to the public. Just so you know, Mayor, this is signed by all homes from Maple Place to First Street, Church Street. I'll submit this tomorrow to the borough. It's signed by 48 residents. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks. Any other members of the public on the phone line?
Michael, and I had one quick question for on Resolution 142, the 2-year Mpp program. I thought I understood from Mr. Delaney that the data that was in the April report has been changed. Did I misunderstand that?
No, I think the whole process of tonight's resolution is accepting the funding from the Department of Community Affairs so that we can then be ready to go in July when the funds are to hit the account. But it didn't really change the plan.
No, it didn't change.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Mr.
It was just
Delaney?
it was a resolution to confirm us moving forward with the year 2 plan funding when the state approves the budget.
So that we don't end up in a situation that we ended in at the end of last year.
And the funding will be sufficient to cover the information that's in the April plan for the year 2.
We hope so. We have not received the check yet, though.
Now, the money being requested. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Delaney, is that correct? I mean, Mr. Delaney, is that correct?
Yes, and just to clarify, in April, the resolution approved those were changes at that time because the funding amount that we were requesting increased from what had been initially prepared and requested in the 5-year plan as part of the initial process. So this did both request additional funds as well as modify what had previously been items that were going to take place in years 2, 3, and 4 to change them so that we are now, we've identified three of those projects for year 2.
All right, so we will be operating per the April plan. Thank you.
That's correct.
Anyone else on the phone lines? Scroll through for video one more time. Anyone wants to speak? If you're on the phone, hit *6. Going once, going twice. Have a motion to close to the public, please.
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Hey.
Aye.
We do have a closed session resolution. I'm not sure if Ms. London or if Mr. Delaney want to read that. And if you can explain whether we plan on taking action when we come out of closed session or not.
It's a resolution to go into closed session regarding negotiations with the police department, the PBA. There is not expected to be any action taken regarding the discussion.
With that, can I have a motion to go into closed?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Members of the public, we're going to be going into a breakout room. And then we'll come back, but as indicated by Ms. London, no further action is expected to be taken when we come out of closed session.